It's the 14th day of this Russian invasion of Ukraine. Remember, the word invasion has been illegalized. It's been criminalized in Russia. Nobody can call this an invasion in Russia. The Ukrainians see it as an invasion. The war-hit country has been left bruised and battered. Take a look at these pictures. Pictures telling the story more than anything else possibly can. It's a country that is in pieces in many of its neighborhoods across cities. The country's capital, Kyiv, will be under siege very soon by all accounts as Russian soldiers inch closer to this top target. Efforts are being made to evacuate all of the suburban areas. India Today's cameras have captured the exodus from the satellite towns of Bucha, of Irpin, of Hostomel as well, as heavy shelling continues to rock these Ukrainian cities. In Kyiv suburb of Irpin, a bridge was damaged. India Today was there to capture it and report. People still trying to cross over that river in order to flee from the town that's still under shelling. In Kyiv, Kharkiv and Vinnytsia, air alarms have just sounded a few minutes ago, while the northeastern city of Sumy, from where hundreds of Indian students were extracted to safety yesterday as part of Operation Ganga, was left in shambles after an overnight attack in that city. Ukraine claims that Russian bombardment claimed over 22 lives, including that of 3 children in the city of Sumy. People in the southern Black Sea port city of Kherson have been gathering to protest against the first Russian city that has been taken over by Ukrainian city that has been taken over by the Russians. Hundreds of citizens have been hitting the streets against that aggression. Meanwhile, Russia has announced another humanitarian ceasefire on Wednesday morning, the third in the last 72 hours. 14 days on, Ukraine has put up the kind of resistance that many, including Russia, perhaps did not expect. Russia, from the first day, had impressed upon Ukrainian troops to lay down their arms and surrender, but that has not happened so far. From home ground advantage to information warfare, we decode the 5 reasons how Ukraine has managed so far to slow Russia's advance, but at a huge cost.
When Russia invaded Ukraine on 22nd February, many felt it would be only a matter of days before the mighty Russian military got the better of the Ukrainian forces. A fortnight later, the end game remains unclear. Ukraine has put up a resistance that was least expected by Russia, especially with civilians voluntarily joining the war to resist the Russian might. With the fall of Kherson, Russian forces were expected to take control of other key cities like Kyiv and Kharkiv. The nature of fight back indicates a detailed battle plan at play. Ukrainian forces have been preparing and readying for a Russian invasion since 2014, when Crimea was annexed. The country's entire military is in tune to fight Russia, as they don't have any threats from its other neighbors like Poland, Hungary, Slovakia or Romania. Putin's soldiers have been surprised by ground tactics of Ukraine troops, including anti-tank weaponry and sniper fire. Russia is also on the back foot in urban warfare because its air force was pressed into action late after the initial bombardment by cruise missiles on February 24th. Lastly, Ukraine might have an inferior military, but it is winning the information battle. They have successfully convinced the world that Russia is the only aggressor and villain in this war.
While claims made by Ukraine about the Russian losses, the death of 11,000 troops, 46 aircrafts, 68 helicopters might not be accurate, but the images of damage to military platforms show Russians have faced a stiff resistance from the Ukrainian forces, what was expected to be a lopsided contest. Ukraine's military might not be a match for the firepower and the numbers of the Russians, but they continue to resist. This is Rajesh Pawar reporting from Kyiv for India Today.
Well, as the war rages on in Ukraine, a new Western stunt over fighter jets to the war-torn country. The United States has rejected Poland's offer of sending fighter jets to Ukraine via a NATO airbase in Germany. Poland had originally appeared to call the bluff by offering to send its MiG-29 jets not directly to Ukraine, but to the Ramstein airbase in Germany that's used as a NATO airfield. Poland said it is up to the US to send those jets onward to Ukraine. The US has tentatively rejected the offer, calling it untenable within the structures of the NATO. The US claims that Poland's offer to send MiG-29 jets to Ukraine so that it can be passed to Ukraine will raise concerns for the NATO alliance. This is the second big betrayal for Ukraine after the continuing reluctance by NATO to impose a no-fly zone. Remember, NATO has rejected Ukraine's request for making its skies a no-fly zone so far and has showed no eagerness whatsoever on sending fighter jets. But what Poland has done now perhaps has put the onus on the NATO as well as the United States. Okay, let's just show you why we think this entire Polish offer of sending MiG-29 jets to the Ramstein airbase in Germany, could be a bit of a stunt. Are they calling the NATO's bluff? Are they trying to be seen to be doing something substantive, but not really doing anything at all because of the complexities involved in executing what Poland is actually offering? Now, Poland is offering these MiG-29 jets to Ukraine, but with a catch. The Ramstein airbase in Germany is where Poland is saying they can send the jets. They're saying, we will send the jets not to Ukraine, we will send them to the NATO airbase in Ramstein in Germany. The Ramstein airbase in Germany, where it will be up to the United States, which also has aircraft stationed there, to send these Polish jets onward to Ukraine after obviously some training. However, the Pentagon, responding to what the Polish government has said, we cannot send these Polish jets to Ukraine from here because that affects the entire NATO structure and has implications for the NATO alliance. So what Poland has basically done is put the ball in America's court, put the ball in NATO's court, and in some small ways also exposed the inherent hypocrisies and inabilities of NATO to actually get involved in this fight too directly. The NATO and the United States, remember, had said, we have greenlit the possibility of Poland sending these, any NATO country sending aircraft to Ukraine to be flown by their pilots. But basically, Poland has put the ball back in their court by saying, we will give you the aircraft, you please send them to Ukraine if you want to. Now, even as Russia ups its offensive, Ukraine's President Zelensky continues to remain defiant to fight for his motherland. But what lies at the heart of the Russia-Ukraine conflict is Ukraine's bid to get that NATO membership. While NATO's silence in the war speaks volumes, the Ukrainian president blames his Western allies. And watch this report in the context of President Zelensky reportedly now saying he's no longer pressing for a NATO membership.
Я запитав сьогодні у 27 лідерів Європи, чи буде Україна в НАТО. Запитав.
Today I've asked 27 European leaders whether Ukraine will be in NATO. I've asked directly, everyone is afraid. No one answers. But we are not afraid. We are not afraid of anything. We are not afraid to defend our country. We are not afraid of Russia. We are not afraid of talking about neutrality. We are not NATO members at the moment. But what guarantees will we get?
Ukraine's bid to get membership of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization is at the heart of the Russia-Ukraine conflict that has now triggered a full-blown war. The two countries are at each other's throats. The third player, NATO, is silent over the key issues. While thousands are displaced and hundreds dead, NATO is not committing to a membership for Ukraine so far. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has also urged NATO to enforce a no-fly zone over his country's skies and protect them from Russian missiles and warplanes. NATO has not agreed to either of his demands.
NATO is a defensive alliance. Our core task is to keep our 30 nations safe. We are not part of this conflict, and we have a responsibility to ensure it does not escalate and spread beyond Ukraine, because that would be even more devastating and more dangerous.
Zelensky feels let down by his Western allies. He said the West could have helped Ukraine, but they witnessed our city get bombed. As the war rages in Ukraine, NATO allies seem to have made distinctions in the help they offer. While they may supply weapons to Ukraine, they will not enter the war in any active role. Ukrainians will have to defend their land themselves. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, the United States has retaliated to Russia by waging an increasing and escalating economic war of sanctions, punitive actions against Putin and his country. US President Biden has banned now the import of oil and gas from Russia, being seen as one of the biggest moves so far. The decision aims at pressurizing President Putin to end the invasion of Ukraine. On Tuesday, speaking at the White House, Biden said that Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at US ports. Remember, the Russian military operation in Ukraine has triggered a huge meltdown in the global economy, with shockwaves being felt everywhere here in India as well. Oil prices have skyrocketed since the operation began 2 weeks ago on this day. On Monday, it soared to more than 9%, hitting their highest levels since 2008. Earlier, Russia had warned of oil prices hitting a record high of $300 per barrel. The Putin administration also threatened to cut off gas supply to Europe. All eyes are now on Russia's comeback, its reply to the US's fresh strike in this economic war.
We're banning all imports of Russian oil and gas and energy. That means Russian oil will no longer be acceptable at U.S. ports, and the American people will deal another powerful blow to Putin's war machine. This is a move that has strong bipartisan support in the Congress and, I believe, in the country. Americans have rallied to support their Ukrainian people and made it clear we will not be part of subsidizing Putin's war. We made this decision in close consultation with our allies and our partners around the world, particularly in Europe, because a united response to Putin's aggression has been my overriding focus, to keep all NATO and all of the EU and our allies totally united. The decision today is not without cost here at home. Putin's war is already hurting American families at the gas pump. Since Putin began his military buildup on Ukrainian borders, just since then, the price of the gas at the pump in America went up 75 cents. And with this action, it's going to go up further. I'm going to do everything I can to minimize Putin's price hike here at home. In coordination with our partners, we've already announced that we're releasing 60 million barrels of oil from our joint oil reserves. Half of that, 30 million, is coming from the United States. And we're taking steps to ensure the reliable supply of global energy. We're also going to keep working with every tool at our disposal to protect American families and businesses.
Now, the economic war between the United States and Russia, well, Russia versus the West, has been one that has increased, escalated, intensified with each passing day. Biden now says all crude imports from Russia have been banned. Russian oil not welcome in American ports. Putin has said we'll cut off natural gas pipeline to Europe, which will have disastrous consequences for energy security in Europe. Biden says the US will not import Russian oil, gas, or energy. Putin says Russia's oil ban will spike prices to $300 a barrel, which could become true very soon. President Biden says the moves are designed to economically punish Putin because those are the only actions being taken by the West so far. Putin says the ban on Russian oil impacts the global markets. You're not just punishing Russia, you're punishing the entire world. Biden says these are economic moves to extend support to Ukraine. Putin says the right to take actions that mirrors the penalties. So this is Putin saying everything that the West is doing is providing Russia with the justification for many of its actions in Ukraine and elsewhere. It's day 14. Many more actions are expected. But what's happening on the ground in Ukraine is non-stop. The big exchange of economic sanctions and attacks between both countries is taking place. But this is what's happening as those exchanges take place in Ukraine. The combat, the damage, the debris, the devastation, the doom really in many of the cities is uninterrupted. We're going to take you to each of those cities on the other side of this break and show you firsthand from our cameras what the situation is on day 14.